With the first season of Diablo coming out in the next week, there might be a lot of new players getting into the game that don't know which class they want to run when the season drops. So in today's video, we're going to go through all 5 of the classes in Diablo and kind of explain what each one of them does and their strengths and weaknesses, and try to help you guys figure out which class will suit you best when the season drops. So without further ado, let's just get right into this. So the first class I want to go over is the Rogue, and this class has a few different ways you can approach builds, and what I mean by that is you can do a ranged build with bows and crossbows, or you can do a melee build with daggers and swords. So it's kind of up to you which one you want to lean more into, but it's nice to have the option of choosing between staying back and being in the middle of everything. So what you're getting with the Rogue is a class that does tons of damage, whether it be AoE or single target. You can clear through dungeons and even the main story really quickly with this class just because of how much damage it can do. The other main thing you're getting with this class is tons of mobility. You have a few different movement abilities that can help you traverse the map or traverse through dungeons, and they can also act as get out of jail free cards if you're stuck in a very sticky situation. The reason I say that is because a couple of the negatives for this class is the lack of defensives. I feel like some of the defensives you get for this class aren't really that good in my opinion. And the other thing is you don't have a whole lot of HP, so you die really quickly if you get stuck without any movement abilities, or whether they're on cooldown or whatever. You can die really fast if you're not careful with this class. All in all, if you're somebody that likes to be really aggressive and likes to always be doing something, this class is definitely for you, because you're not really going to be finding yourself sitting in a situation where you're not doing anything, where you're just pressing one button. You're always going to be moving around trying to get angles or just being in the middle of the fight. So if you're somebody that likes playing like that, definitely give the Rogue a go, and if you need some help with some builds, definitely check the channel out because we have a few different Rogue builds. Alright, and moving on to the Druid, we have a tank class that can deal a lot of damage a little bit later on once you have some of the legendaries that help make this class better. The thing with the Druid is this is going to be a class that's really slow to level and it's honestly relatively pretty weak in the early game in my experience. But it does get a lot better in the end game, and even in the mid game it starts getting a little bit better. So if you can kind of power through the first like 30 levels, it does become a pretty good class to run, and again, it's a pretty good tank as well. So a couple things to note with this class aside from what I just said is there's not a whole lot of movement with this class, obviously, as with most tanks in most games. But yeah, there's not going to be much movement abilities. You're kind of going to be slogging around pretty slow. But you do get a lot of defensives. Like, it is very hard to die on a Druid from what I've experienced. Like, you can stay alive for a pretty long time on this class and just take a bunch of damage. I've definitely had the most fun with this class playing with a friend or just playing with a group of people. I found that it wasn't as fun playing by myself, but again, that's just my opinion. So for me, I think you get the most out of this class playing with a duo. And if you're somebody that just wants to be able to eat a bunch of damage and just kind of run into the middle of a horde and just not die, then this is definitely a class you're going to want to play. All that being said, I definitely have the least amount of experience with the Druid in my time playing this game as opposed to the other classes. But if you are looking for a class that has really good survivability that can also deal its fair share of damage, then the Druid is definitely something you want to check out.
So first, let's start with the Necromancer. This is the class I've played the most, and it has quite a few diverse builds, but a lot of them do require uniques to really get the ball rolling. So what you can expect to be playing on this build, especially while you're leveling, is Bone Spear. Bone Spear is by far the most efficient and really the best option all the way up until you get some special uniques, and then you can kind of branch off into some other builds. There are some alternatives if you want to take a break, but they will be nowhere near as fast as Bone Spear. There's no movement on this class at all. Like, very slow class. It's probably the slowest class in terms of like just moving around in the dungeons. So that is one of the major setbacks. Is it's probably the highest damage, but the slowest at the same time. So keep that in mind if you're deciding to play Necromancer. The Necromancer has quite a few perks to it. It has a lot of minions, skeletons, cold mages, golems at your disposal. You could run summoner builds and stuff like that to really help you with bosses. You might kill a boss slow, but if you're struggling, you can always switch to that build and guarantee the kill. It just will take some time. With that being said, I would say that the Necromancer is probably my least favorite, and the reason why is Jake plays a rogue. It feels like I'm just there, I'm not actually doing anything because this class is so slow. Like, he'll be completely through the dungeon and just kill everything before I even get there, so I'm just walking through the dungeon, and that is why I will not be playing the Necromancer in Season 1. Let's move on to the Sorcerer. Now, the Sorcerer is my personal favorite out of the 3 classes that I played, and it's definitely what I'm going to be playing for Season 1, at least my first character. The reason why I'm going to play Sorcerer is because it has teleport. I can keep up with the rogue. We can clear stuff on the same level, and we'll be more efficient in leveling that way. There's that, and Sorcerer also synergizes really well with Rogue because I can make a lot of stuff vulnerable for the Rogue. I can group stuff up if I want to run a fire build. There's just a lot of different options when it comes to the Sorcerer. It's just quick. It's quick, probably the quickest or second quickest in terms of just pure speed. It has some issues. I ran into some issues on Sorcerer early on, like mana issues, but once you get aspects and legendaries, you really amp up your damage. So I would say the pros to the Sorcerer are just being able to one-shot everything, especially if you're running an ice build. You can TP in Frost Nova and just delete everything, and then you have about a 10-second window where you can't do very much damage at all. And then once your Frost Nova comes back up, you'll TP in, Frost Nova everything, and everything gets deleted again. So if you're somebody that likes to speed run around a dungeon and just one-shot an entire room and move on to the next, I think Sorcerer is for you. That's what the class specializes in. Con of the Sorcerer is mana. Until you get your aspects and special gear, mana does become an issue. But like I said, that's really not that big of a downfall, especially if you play it properly, where you kind of run like an elite hunting build as opposed to like killing individual enemies. Like, I never killed individual enemies on my Sorcerer. I would just keep running until my Frost Nova was up, found a big group, pop Frost Nova, kill everything, and then move on to the next. Sorcerer is also a lot of fun because of the TPs. You just feel so powerful with all the builds. There's a Flame Wall build you can run with the snake. Like, there's a lot of abilities that just feel nice to use on Sorcerer. And when I compare Sorcerer to Necromancer, it's so much more satisfying. Going back to the Necromancer for just a second here, the Necromancer doesn't really have any very cool abilities. I mean, you got Corpse Explosion, and it kind of looks cool, but like for ultimates, you have Blood Wave, Bone Storm, and Army of the Dead, and they're all kind of lackluster in my opinion. I mean, Bone Storm's pretty good, but like, you get a giant snake on Sorcerer. You get a giant snake, you freeze everything. It just feels so much more impactful when you're on Sorcerer. And last but not least, let's go over Barbarian. Barbarian is a very special class in my opinion, because you kind of get the best of both worlds. I believe it's Hammer of the Ancients. That build is super strong, kind of like Bone Spear. It's super strong and hits like a truck, but it has a lot of amp up time where you have to auto attack like 3-4 times just to get a hammer in. So that can be kind of annoying. The Whirlwind build is really fun to play, but you do need quite a few items to sustain the fury needed in that build. And it kind of goes back to the Sorcerer, where you're kind of like running into rooms, killing huge packs, and then moving to the next, not spending time killing individual enemies. But Barbarian does have a movement, so I would still prefer playing Barbarian over the Necromancer. And funny enough, Necromancer and Barbarian feel more like support classes, whereas a Sorcerer or Rogue feels more like a carry. Necro has some abilities that will pool enemies together with Shadow Blight once you get some special legendary items. So it can feel like a supportive type class. And same thing with Barbarian. It's got a lot of shouts. It has the ability to pull enemies in with Whirlwind. And I feel like those classes will mostly be used as supportive. I mean, not mostly used as supportive roles. Every class can solo clear content. But that's how I look at them. So for Barbarian, I feel like the player that would like Barbarian is someone that likes to be on the front line, to stand in the middle of a bunch of enemies and just go to town. You won't kill anything nearly as fast as a Necro or a Sorcerer, but you can face tank everything. So if you like playing tanks in role-based games, I think you would enjoy Barbarian. Barbarian can be kind of slow, not anywhere near as slow as Druid. If you're okay with that and suffering a little bit in the early game for a fun Whirlwind build late game, then Barbarian's probably for you. You have leap, you have charge, you do have movement abilities, just not as good as the Sorcerer. Alright guys, well, I've only played those 3 classes, but before I go, I just want to give everybody a reminder that we have a community Discord, mainly focused on hardcore mode. We will be looking for people to play during the season, and I'm hoping that this Discord can help others find other players to play with. So make sure you join the Discord if you haven't already. We've been growing pretty quick, so special shout out to everybody. We hit almost 150 subs in the first month, so that is fantastic. And with the lead up to Season 1, don't expect very much Diablo content from us as we prepare for the grind, but we will be posting some content for you guys. I plan on making a comp list for everybody that wants to min-max and what I think the best comps are. So make sure you subscribe to see that video, and don't forget to like and leave some feedback in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.